I actually want to think big picture with you a little bit here, strategically speaking. So seriously, like big picture from your vantage point, what does it take to actually win a state? It seems simple enough, right? But to win a state, what do you have to do? So if say I were running for office, what would I need to do to make sure I win?
Well, let me talk about the biggest fallacy that we find with people that come to me that are new to politics, right? Like, hey, I want to run for Congress. And I tell them all the time, whether it's dog catcher, school board, county commissioner, state rep, Congress, Senate, everybody has this facade that when a voter walks into the voting booth, they look at your name, they look at your opponent's name, and they understand your full platform. They think about their values, and then they vote for the candidate that most closely aligns with their values. And it's just not true. A lot of these races, because of the establishment, because of how much money from the lobbyists and the special interests go into these races, because they have a vested interest in keeping the government funds coming to their company or coming to their industry, they pour tons of dollars in. So because of the rise of alternative media and different things, it is a little bit easier for people to jump in because the message is not all, through one channel.
Right.
But I tell people, if you want to run for Congress, it's going to cost you a minimum of $3 million.
Wow.
And so when I say that to people, they're like, well, and I'm like, listen, there might have been races in 2010, maybe 2014. But once you got past that, even those years, it was like you needed $1 million to win. And so, and when I say this, I'm talking about if Patriots decide to run.
Right.
And the reason you need that money is because if they find out that you're a candidate who's not going to go along to get along, if you're going to stand up to some of the corruption, if you're going to vote against the swamp, they have all these groups lined up ready to identify those people and destroy them.
Wow.
And the whole strategy is pretty fascinating. I've seen it done, sadly, to 5 of my good friends who we would get elected to state level, and there's an opening and they go to run. In the last 30 days, the establishment will spend $3 million in television and mail.
Wow.
And so you figure $100,000 a day.
Wow.
Making Dr. Steve out to be a monster.
Yeah.
And I work with these great, humble Christian patriots that are running for office who are like, but I don't have any skeletons in my closet. I'm like, you don't need them because they'll create them. The ads are already written.
Right.
So I joke, but I spend a lot of time not trying to talk people out of running for office, but when you're talking about how do you win, if you go into some of these races, you have to be able to compete with money, which is always the biggest challenge. But let's say you get over that hump. Then it becomes something of, do you understand the consultant class enough to navigate? Because people ask me, they say, Cliff, do you really think that doors are the answer? And if so, why do you spend money on anything else?
Right.
And I say, look, we have to compete where the Democrats are, which is at the door, which I have the literature to show is the most impactful way to get people to vote. But you can't avoid traditional media.
Right.
You can't avoid mail.
It's both and. It's not either or.
And we don't have to have parity. We don't have to match them. But I just tell individuals, you have to play in all these spaces. But 90% of the time, they don't get past the money line.
Right.
And that is why I push people to run for local office.
Right.
Because if you're doing local office, you can get involved in a way that is just like, you can compete because you can raise $25,000 to run for office.
Right.
And so it makes it that the blue collar worker, the normal person, can have enough of their friends come together and to support them. But flipping a state, I mean, you're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Dang.
I mean, you had Trump obviously in 24. Let's just talk PA. I mean, you figure the campaign in PA, is spending $100 million.
Yep.
You figure the campaign, PACs are spending probably close to $250 million. I'm just talking about PA.
Right. One state.
And then you add up all the congressional candidate budgets.
Oh my.
The McCormick Senate budget.
Oh my. Yeah. And the Bob Casey and
right. So this is obviously both sides.
Yeah.
But I just tell individuals, many hands makes for light work.
Yeah.
But you couldn't even pull off some of these states if you didn't have people doing it.
Yeah.
Activists, though, get burned out because they get into a lot of these big races.
Yeah.
They try to flip a state. And the power of winning is fantastic.
Yeah.
But the demoralizing side effects of losing, I'm always like, look, stick with things that you can have an impact.
Yeah.
Because, if you had $1 million budget and you try to dump it into a Senate race, you might move the needle 0.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Put $1 million into 30 state rep races,
Yeah.
you might control the state legislature.
Right.
And that's the mindset I'm always pushing people is, go local, not because
local,
it's
yeah.
that much more important
Yeah.
or less important, but because you can have an impact.
When we were talking last, you were talking about running. What were the
Judge of elections?
Yeah, judge of elections. Yeah, that fits right into that schema, doesn't it?
And the nice thing is when you can get, the establishment is not used to conservative, actual grassroots groups that are funded and that communicate well. And so the nice thing is when you work bottom up, it allows you to then go to the people that now trust you because you helped get them elected, and you can devise or conspire plans to hold certain Republicans accountable.
Right.
I mean, imagine if there's a budget vote in Congress and you're a Republican congressman, and let's say Doge comes out and says, hey, listen, the swamp and us are going head to head.
Yeah.
But your Republican congressman hasn't come out yet to say that he is voting with Doge.
Yeah.
And he's going to be with Trump.
Yeah.
Well, if you get 40 local elected officials that are Republican in your congressional district to start putting out public statements, writing letters, blowing them up on Facebook. Hey, why haven't you come out yet?
Right.
It is a counterbalance to what happens in D.C.
A forcing mechanism, right? Yeah.
That same thing, but from the lobbyists.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is always going to be anti-cut, I think that's just for me one of the key differences between Democrats and Republicans. I'm curious in your thought. Republicans seem to be inherently dysfunctional. I'm talking about congressional Republicans because, half, like Rand Paul, for example, half really want to cut, Tom Massey and so forth, but the other half don't. Whereas with Democrats, they all want to just grow government. They're 100% united. Am I hitting it right, or is that the key difference between the two parties? Just in terms of their competence and their functionality.
Yeah, and that's what's tough about anything going through D.C. is people have this facade of what is happening. When I worked for Ron Paul on the Hill before he retired, and it was 2011 and 2012, and I always tell people the greatest lesson I ever learned is Republicans get on the floor and they give their big speeches to the C-SPAN cameras. We got to cut spending. We got to cut it. We got to reform it. Our debt's out of control. The deficit, the federal debt. Democrats get on the floor, give their whole speech, pulling on heartstrings. You're trying to kill old people and you're trying to steal money from the poor.
Right.
And they give all their speeches. And the Republican leader and the Democrat leader, they go back into the smoke-filled room. Yeah. And they say, listen, we'll give you money for military and for the things that Republicans care about. Right. We'll take the money for the domestic welfare. Right. And they say, okay. They come out, and every year we just spend more money. But they gave the speeches, so that's
and that's on. And they got on Hannity and all that sort of exactly. That just drives me crazy. I can't even look at X. Tweets anymore with, so-and-so says we need to. It's just like, I'm done, guys. Stop saying, and just do it. Although they did seem to do some good stuff today with passing some of Trump's budget.
What's crazy about the digital age, and I think it's really going to start to bite him in the rear end, is like Schumer. A lot of the Democrats that have been around for a while. I mean, some of these video montages of positions he took on immigration, positions he took on
killing them,
waste, fraud, and abuse.
Oh my, and
it's like
tariffs. The 1990s speeches on tariffs in China. I mean, it's like that's literally if I read that transcript and said who's saying that, you would have thought it was Trump. Right. No, it's Nancy Pelosi, it's Chuck Schumer. Yeah,
and because we have such decentralized ways to get information out now. Right? People are getting it from different angles. I think it's going to be great for holding politicians accountable.
It's awesome.
Because all the chit chat and all this just yakety yak out of DC. Well, now they're being exposed. It's not just, hey, we go to DC once a month and give our floor speech, and that's what they hear.
And that's it, right? And that's all that ABC plays or C-SPAN plays, and then it's gone.